So, good morning, everybody. It's just after 11 o'clock and we're going to get started. So welcome to the July LCMB webinar. I hope wherever you are, it's as gloriously sunny as it is in North Oxfordshire this morning. So today we're looking at managing a safe and productive return to your workplace. We've got three great guests: Joe Nettleton, Head of Facilities at Avas, Tom Perno, Director of Property Services at Universal Music Group, and Pete Moores, Chief Problem Solver at BPM Consulting. I'm going to ask Joe, Tom, and Pete to switch on their cameras and mics, and we'll get going with some introductions shortly. I'll ask Tom, my colleague, to do the same. So today, I guess it's universally being identified as Freedom Week. And what we're going to do is we're going to speak to our guests about their thoughts and insights on how we manage the return to the workplace as we navigate, I guess, the beginning of the end of the current phase of the pandemic. Just bear with me a second, my slides have disappeared. Are you able to see my slides, Tom? Can I just check if they're still online? They are. Okay. And can I check? Am I on the front slide in terms of the title?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So just bear with me a second. I'm just going to see if I can get my slide view back up because I can't see my slides in the current view. There we go. Thank you. So in terms of introductions, I'm afraid I didn't have any nice photos of Joe and Tom. So what I've done is I've put up some photos of the key buildings they're managing. So Joe Nettleton is the Head of Facilities at Avas, and we've had the pleasure to work with Joe over the last couple of years to help them optimise the performance of 3 Pancras Square. This is the lobby of their corporate HQ in central London, and this is one of the buildings that houses circa 1800 of their staff, and Joe and his team are responsible for managing this building and the other buildings for Havas across the UK. Tom Perno, Director of Properties at UMG, and the photo I have there is 4 Pancras Square, the building at King's Cross, which is their iconic corporate headquarters in London and the UK, and is home to such iconic labels as Ireland, Jeff Jam, as well as Canal Plus and a number of other businesses. And I'm also delighted to welcome Pete Moores. And Pete specialises in helping growth university spin-out companies, and he helps them attract funding and increase their company value. Pete has over 20 years of commercialization experience, and he has previously mentored startup technology companies and was a lead coach and mentor on the Royal Academy of Engineering Leaders Programme. So I'm delighted to welcome our 3 guests today, and we'll move on to a discussion shortly. Just to introduce myself, for those that don't know me, I'm John O'Brien. I'm the founder and MD of LCMB, and with me today I have Tom Cudmore, who will be leading our Q&A. And again, for those that don't know us, LCMB, our sort of purpose and mission is about creating great places to work and ideally transforming the impact that our clients' workplaces have for the organisations, people and customers. So today, we're going to talk about how to manage a safe and productive return to the workplace. I guess if we transport ourselves back about 12, 18 months, we were all grappling around at the beginning of the pandemic as to how to create COVID-secure workplaces and facilities. And in the last week, on Monday, we were released into the new era where all of the sort of legally binding COVID secure obligations have been removed. So the Health and Safety Executive, UK government and some specialists such as CIBSE, the Royal Academy of Engineering and so on, have all published guidance last week, the end of last week and the beginning of this week, giving us, I guess, their thoughts on how to move forward with reoccupying our workplaces over the coming months and year. it. And what I've done here is just quickly summarize the guidance that has essentially been put out by those entities and what we would recommend to our clients. So the first piece of guidance is around risk assessments, and most businesses will have conducted these at the beginning of last year, and the advice from Health and Safety Executive and others is to start by updating risk assessments specific to your business, specific to your people, specific to your circumstances as of now, looking forward, and just think about how you refresh what you've done previously. And certainly the Health and Safety Executive will be visiting businesses over the coming period and looking for evidence that that's the case. In terms of clean hygiene and hand washing, the recommendation is to continue whatever protocols you've put in place, so don't change anything which you had in place prior to the 19th. One of the biggest issues is ventilation in terms of fresh air, and both the Royal Academy of Engineering, Health and Safety Executive and CIBSE, the Chartered Institute of Building Services Engineers, are suggesting that paying particular attention to ventilation in spaces will reduce the risk of cross-transmission of COVID. So particular attention needs to be paid to that, and we would recommend no change to the regimes that you've had in place prior to the 19th of July. And just to refresh you in terms of what those should have been, it's full fresh air into your buildings with no recirculated air. You should be purging your spaces before and after occupation, disabling air recovery systems, thermal wheels, that type of thing. Another key piece of advice coming out from the Health and Safety Executive is talk to workers and provide information. Explain the changes that you're making, listen to concerns, and continue to with that dialogue as you actually reoccupy your spaces. And we also need to remember that if people are working from home, we have an obligation to ensure that they're protected, they're actually given the tools that they need in terms of computer, phone, video conferencing facilities, safe working environment in terms of desk ergonomically, and we have an obligation to keep in regular contact, making sure that we discuss their well-being. And again, the Health and Safety Executive and others have guidance on this. And lastly, we need to ensure that vulnerable workers, those who perhaps are more prone to COVID or significant health impacts from COVID, are taken into account and controls are in place to protect their well-being going forward. The other important thing we think as a business is to ensure that before you move on to life post-pandemic is to capture the COVID lessons learned. Think about the processes and performance that you put in place as a business that actually positively impacted how your people experienced working at home, working in the office, how it impacted their health and well-being, both physical and mental, how it impacted the productivity and performance. And think about the behaviors, both in terms of your people and your customers, and what's changed and how you should perhaps approach dealing with those changes differently. And canvass your people as well as look at the needs that they have perhaps with the sort of remote blended working model, working in the workplace and elsewhere. So staying productive, we need to think about what can be done remotely, what's going to be done in the workplace, what's the ideal blend of remote working, workplace working, and what implications does that have for your estate in terms of your workplace and your buildings. And our recommendation is to start thinking about reducing your workplace now. If you're moving from 5-day working to 3-day working, immediately 40% of your workspace is redundant or needs to be repurposed. And the other key thing is to think about how you ensure that the working experience that your employees have at home or remotely is as good, if not better, than the workplace experience they have when they come to work, and what different support and work you want to do in those two environments. So in summary, think about getting employee feedback. Don't lose the lessons learned. We do think there's a big opportunity to shrink workplaces, releasing spend to invest in remote working, invest in better quality workplaces. Think about moving on your remote working policy and investing in that. COVID secure, I think our view is that you need to be continuing to think about COVID security through to the end of 2022 at least, because we don't see any change to the current government's guidance or the revised guidance coming through until we're significantly in a better place, and the same thing at a global level. And in terms of employee experience, think about what you want to deliver in the workplace, what you want to deliver in the home, and how you're going to make those things different. This is a flowchart from the World Green Building Council, which sort of explains how you can almost design a workplace to improve employee health, well-being, and experience. And it's summarized in some reports which are available to download from our website, which highlight our research in this space as well as our guidance. So hopefully that's given us a little bit of an update in terms of where we're at with government policy, and also what the guidance is going forward. I'm going to hand to my colleague Tom Cudmore, who's going to introduce our guests and get their experience, I guess, from their personal point of view and organisation as to how life is going to be different moving forward in terms of Freedom Week. Can I just ask us again to mute ourselves? We got a little bit of, thank you very much, we got a little bit of echo. So over to you, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you, John, and morning, everybody. So yeah, just to introduce myself, my name's Tom Cavan, and I'm a senior consultant at LCMB. I've been working with the business since 2016, and I led the research that we conducted on productivity, well-being, and indoor environmental quality. So my focus for the business is very much getting performance, and performance being the sort of holistic performance with regards to the people in the space and how we optimize buildings to maximize performance. And for me, the interest of the conversation today and the impact of COVID is around how we can use it to maximize or improve performance from where it was pre-COVID. And that blended work model for some organizations is potentially a sort of catalyst to do that. We can actually seize that as an opportunity to bring further benefits really to the way people are working that will improve their happiness, their well-being, which ultimately has a knock-on on their contribution to the business. So without further ado, I'll get started with the questions. I'll come to Tom first. And Tom, can you just sort of introduce yourself a little bit more, building on what John said earlier, and say a little bit more about your organisation's planned approach to the return to work?
Morning, everybody. Sure. Hi, Tom. So I'm Director of Property Services for Universal Music Group. We have different buildings across London and the Greater London, including some archive facilities, recording studios, and typical office spaces. I would say the focus will be on 4 Pancras Square, which is our global headquarter, or UK and global headquarter, because this is where we have most of our staff. And what the strategy we've decided to take on was a very, very careful approach to really look at what other people are doing within the industry, the music industry, but also within the wider corporate office world, and try to take the best out of what we could see there. So a very careful approach, and communication with staff. So that was really, really important to listen to what people want.
Brilliant, thanks, Tom. And yeah, Joe, what's the situation for Havas? And give us a bit of an introduction to yourself and your own role.
Yeah, so I'm the head of facilities at Havas, which is a communications company incorporating 22 agencies with a range of different specialisms, broadly fitting under the advertising, media, and health bucket spanners. So I look after our flagship site in London at King's Cross, which is sort of 160,000 square foot, and day to day. Before COVID, we used to get about sort of 1,500 people in the building any given day. Our approach to our return to work has been, from our CEO, has always been to keep the building open and let, when we're allowed, but when we're not in lockdown, and let those that need to come to work for essential reasons, right? If you're some people, if you're designers, or you need to upload heavy video files, or you have slow internet at home, we've always been open since May, after the first lockdown. We were certainly one of the first communications companies to open our doors, but we've been treading very carefully, and we've been changing the risk assessment controls with the external factors. So the risk assessment changes, every month or so. But regarding our return to the office, each of our 22 agencies is going to use this period now to sort of see what fits them best. So, I think broadly the approach is, right, for the first month now we're back, we're going to say that everyone, certain teams have to be in on Monday and Tuesday, and other teams have to be in on Wednesday and Thursday. And then the next month they might try an approach whereby everyone comes in on Friday, and then you can pick 2 days yourself from the rest of the week. So I think they're just going to try different models and use these next, perhaps the rest of the year, to see what fits each agency best. As me managing the whole building, what we struggle with is Mondays and Fridays. Obviously, we pay rent on a building for 7 days a week, and we're seeing it's used broadly for 3, right? Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So we're hoping the outputs of these trials will create different models for different businesses that will complement each other in terms of sort of flattening that bell curve a bit.
Thank you, Joe. Just going back to the point you made on you've been open since May. What's the occupation been like since May, and how has that sort of trended up? And what sort of levels of occupation are you at now, roughly?
So we're talking May 2020, after lockdown 1.
Yeah.
And it was very tentative at the start. Essentially people who their internet was so poor that they couldn't work properly from home, that 3 kids at home was stopping them working almost at all. So it was really those who had a real business need, not to work from home. And then as we progressed out of it, we saw more and more people come to work. We sort of got to a peak. The risk assessment changes, right? We started with 10%. We're going to say a maximum of 10% occupancy. Then it went to 20, then 25. And the most it's been is up to 33, up until now, actually, where we're saying we can safely have half of the building population in. And at that stage, in June, July last year, we were getting 500 people in the building. And broadly, from what we're hearing back, those 500 people are feeling safe in the building. But that said, of those 500 people, that's 500 people. We've never told anyone to come to work as yet. So those 500 people were 500 willing participants. You're not 500 people that were not scared, that apprehensive about getting on the train, or using the lifts, or being in pinch points like the cafe and things like that. So yeah, we have had quite a thriving building on more than a few occasions.
Thank you. That's brilliant. And Pete, if you could just introduce yourself, and obviously you're coming at this from a slightly different perspective, as in you're not managing the facility directly yourself.
Absolutely, yes. So yeah, I'm Pete Moores, and I've worked as an innovation consultant for about 20 years, specializing in getting research from the lab into the market. Last year, in the middle of lockdown, I set up my own consultancy, PVM Consulting, to help high growth companies improve their attractiveness to investors and align better with attractive markets. So as such, I do have a different view than my fellow panelists, more from the perspectives of my clients than running my own office. I mean, my own personal delivery model because it was started during the pandemic, has been 100% online/remote working. And I've developed ways of delivering really complex workshops using online tools that in some ways have got better interaction than traditional face-to-face, post-it note type workshops. But it's really been interesting for me in seeing different approaches taken by my various clients. So one has decided to give notice on their office property and move to a 100% remote working model. They're an innovation consultancy, so they deliver a lot of workshops at their clients' facilities. So they decided they don't need the office space anymore. One has proposed a model, they're a big organization, has proposed a model they're calling flexible, which is a horrible word, but it's attempting to describe this kind of mix of 2 days at home, 3 days in the office, with a kind of a booking system to manage it all. And on the other end of the spectrum, one company who have coincidentally recently invested very heavily in the refurbishment of a brand new office, they've been trying quite unsuccessfully to sort of cajole their employees back to the office, which hasn't really worked and has created a lot of tension with the people feeling they're pressured to go back to the workplace. So that's definitely what not to do.
Okay, that's an interesting point actually, and probably worth sort of going on to what was my next question, because it relates to that. In terms of sort of the nervousness around people coming back to the office, in that instance, do they have a handle on why people are reluctant, or is it more a case of it's because they're being told to do something when it's potentially contrary to the sort of government advice at the time?
I think it's a bit of both. I mean, first of all, it is absolutely natural for anyone to have some sort of unlocking anxiety. These are all unknowns that we're working in and have been working in for the past 16 months. And we've all developed new working patterns. And some of those have been quite difficult to adjust to. So they developed some very good routines working from home, like lunchtime walks or setting up Zoom social calls to remain in touch with the team on a social level. And that's helped them manage their mental health. So some of those people are quite anxious that those kind of safety nets, if you like, are going to be gone if they're going full time back into the office, and they may not be accommodated. And I think the analogy I'd use for any sort of return to the office is a bit like a gymnast or a sports person returning to their profession from an injury break. You don't go straight into it 100% like my client was trying to do. You ease back into old routines, you test the impact of such a major change. And I think, as noted by Tom in his introduction, consulting with employees, or John's introduction as well, consulting with employees and finding out what kind of safety nets they want to have to manage their anxiety is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. I mean, yeah, Tom, coming back to you then, what have you had any sort of specific incidences where you've had feedback already from the staff on what their sort of specific nervousness might be about return to work?
Absolutely, yes. We've been speaking to colleagues since the very beginning on different type of media. And we've had a mixed bag, really. We've had people who are desperate to come back to the office. Joe was mentioning, you've got your partner, your kids at home, poor internet. Some people are sharing flats and only can work in their bedroom. So we've had a very, very mixed bag, and other people are extremely happy working from home, and it would be much harder for them to willingly want to come back to the office. So we're looking at the right balance for everybody to be happy.
Have you had any sort of resistance from people who, or has it not got to this stage yet, where people have actually said, tell me why I need to go back to the office. I've proved I'm being productive at home. I don't want to go in the office. So it's your problem to convince me, rather than, that kind of almost, in your face sort of resistance.
We've had a little bit, not much actually, looking at the 1,700 employees we have in the UK. It has been a minority. My personal opinion is that there is an underlying factor. So the reason they are coming forward with a reluctance to coming back to the office is not just due to the sole fact of, I want to work from home. And I think the majority of people understand that there is a huge benefit of meeting people, not having coordinated Zoom meetings and impromptu discussions with people face to face has a massive benefit to the business. Really a minority, and what we are doing is really working with them to see, right, okay, so what can we do to make it easier for your personal journey back to the office?
Sure. I mean, I think I'll come back in a minute to that sort of what's been missing piece, because I think that's a big point in itself. What haven't we had that we're going to get back, and how's that going to be a benefit? But we'll just come on to Joe with regards to that nervousness question, and yeah, if you've sort of sensed what that nervousness might be within your own staff. You're on mute still at the moment.
Sorry. Yeah, in regards to sort of alleviating their nervousness, we've talked about this a lot already. Communication is the crux, I feel. But look, it all starts with a comprehensive risk assessment. So we, as property managers and health and safety professionals, need to address all of the hazards and implement control measures to manage those, right? So born out of the risk assessment will be policies, procedures, safe systems of work, that sort of thing. And then from that, communication to your employees. So for instance, we have a handbook that we've developed that sort of says it's got some sort of nice to have stuff in it. Look, we've increased our cleaners by 30%. Look, we're fogging high traffic areas that the virus doesn't live on for 30 days. So it tells them about certain things, and then it also tests them or informs them on what they need to do on site. This is the upstairs, this is the downstairs, masks in the lifts, maximum amount of people, this is how you behave in the cafe. And they have to take a little pop quiz of a predetermined set of questions that they have to get 5 out of 5 right. And actually it's quite easy. We just didn't want to make sure that they're asleep or that they click through it just to get the little certificate on our Havash University portal. So once that's all the sort of before they've come to work stuff, then from the minute they walk in our front door, there's a sort of a thermal camera pointing at them and a big sign that says, "We are taking your temperature." They've received a privacy note before they come. And then the journey into the office, you see more cleaners. There's posters around telling you how to behave and, to be considerate of your colleagues. And I think when they come to work, they need to see that the workplace has been adjusted. If they walk into the same building, they're not going to feel relieved. So I think a lot of it is, more increased cleaning provision, we know, reduces the risk of the virus spread, right? But it's also that sort of PR piece. If they see cleaners walking around cleaning door handles, they're going to feel better. How well these temperature scanners work, I think is yet to be, is yet to be flushed out. We're yet to pick anyone up yet. I feel if you have a high temperature, you're not going to come to work anyway. We tell them that. But once again, it's that PR bit that just makes them feel more comfortable and that they can see that, we've put a lot of work in.
Thanks, Joe. Did you want to jump in there, Pete?
Yeah, I was just going to say that Joe's raised a really important point, in terms of setting kind of cultural norms for office behaviour to the highest level of protection, not the lowest. I just wondered, how that, because this situation when return to work is likely to create some people which are kind of influencers and set the culture, and then others which don't believe they should be doing this much, and that has the potential to create conflict and tension. How do you sort of manage that in a large organisation?
So we've still got to say the social distancing stickers on the floor. we no longer in our communications ram social distancing and hand washing say down their throats. We feel that point has been well made to such an extent. But now that it's actually legal to see a friend of yours from work who you haven't seen maybe in a year and a half and give them a cuddle, we're not going to dictate that people can't do that, mostly because it's probably a behavior that we're not going to be able to change anyway. So what we've got 3 color wristbands: red, amber and green. Green means, look, I'm comfortable, I don't mind you shaking my hand. Amber means happy with face-to-face conversations, but just keep a meter. And red means, look, I'm still very worried, 2 meters please.
What's been the response to that system? Sorry, what's been the response to that, Joe? Because that's quite an innovative practice still, I think, and really sort of shows you are thinking about people on an individual level rather than just a sort of generic one-size-fits-all sort of message. So I can see, it's a really positive sort of step.
I'd like to tell you the response to that, Tom, as we launch this iteration of the risk assessment and relative communication and all the stuff off the back of it on Monday. But some of our team, one of my team got COVID, which then made the NHS app ping the rest of us. We've literally got 2 building services staff in from a strength of usually about 25. So we've had to close the building for the rest of the week. But there you go, this is the world we live in.
Yeah, that's the reality. Did you have anything to add around that, Tom?
No, just to emphasize what Joe mentioned and the importance to keep the message strong. So same thing, we kept all our social distancing stickers on the floors and all the posters. So we might not necessarily communicate about social distancing, but we are still implementing it in effect within our desk booking system, and equally with when people are asking questions. So we've got, we encourage people, to social distance, but we are very aware that once you are in the office and you see your colleagues that you haven't seen for many, many months, and you're very happy and you are at low risk and they are at low risk, they will want to hug. We're not the COVID police. That's something that we made clear. We're just encouraging people to be safe, and we hoping that people will do the right thing with the people they're working with.
I think the point there is it's a really fine line, isn't it, between being seen as the COVID police, and once you cross that line, people are going to be very resistant to sort of the communications you're giving. But that other kind of, well, I want some reassurance that you're actually doing your job properly. It's your responsibility, guys, to be looking after me if you want me to come back into this space. So in terms of looking forward then, Tom, what do you see as the sort of long-term picture for UMG with regards to the working model? Is this kind of blended working going to be a long-term fixture, do you think, or is it too early to say?
It's the $1 million, euro, pound question, really. Everybody would love to know that. We are keeping with our cautious approach, and we are just waiting to see what works for people. So we are trying different models, and we have the joy of working from home with a toddler that is in full swing. But yes, we're just taking a step back, looking at what people want, and for us at Universal Music, it's a bit too early to say. We're still at the very beginning of our return to the office strategy.
And just coming on to you, Pete. So in terms of the businesses you're working with, you mentioned already that there's a kind of quite a mix really in how they're approaching things. Have you been given any guidance as to how you sort of feel they should manage that decision-making process?
I'm not sure that I have. I think, as I illustrated with the 3 different client examples, there's quite a diversity. But I think the biggest thing this enforced period of remote working has proven, or rather has disproven, is this kind of myth that many organizations had at the start, that working in an office 9 to 5 Monday to Friday means that you're automatically productive. And if you're working from home, you're sat around in your pajamas, drinking tea and watching Netflix. I think the increase in productivity of many people over the pandemic has proven that's rubbish, and therefore there's a lot more trust in employers that when the employees are working from home, especially on things which require a lot of focus, like like design or writing a proposal or researching a paper, working from home can be as productive, if not more so, with less interruptions than the office. So I think it's made it more of a choice for employers than perhaps it was 16, 18 months ago.
And what's your situation, Joe, in terms of the longer term picture for Havas? Has there been those decisions? I think previously you'd mentioned that the sort of powers that be are quite keen on that collaboration for an organisation like Havas because it's creative and traditionally is very much sort of fed on the sort of cross contamination of ideas between businesses.
Yeah, we have 22 agencies, so a lot of it is about, if one agency brings in a bit of business, what other services within the Havas family can we offer that client, right? So increasing our potential there. And we have like stairs that are cut through the floors, accommodation stairs that run through the floors. I see people having meetings between floors, one of them looking down, saying, have you got that? Did you do that thing? And the other one going, yeah, actually, let me just ask, so it's all about those sparks of, look, pressing work on, I think in the creative industries, especially perhaps, face-to-face communication is very important. Pete said that some of his workshops were more effective online than in real life. I wish that my creatives would get on board with the same thing, because we have a real meeting room headache now. But regarding our the model going forward, we during lockdown have been undertaking moves. Lockdown precipitated us. We were going agile beforehand, and actually we were going to invest quite a bit of money with a behavioral change consultant to help us on that journey, but we didn't. We saved ourselves 50 grand, and because everyone realized that they could work from home en masse almost overnight. So what we've been doing is we've been reducing the footprint of our agencies, some by going from 20% less, others up to half, so that they have a smaller footprint within the business, therefore they have less overheads, and we can get other businesses that have us businesses into those spaces. So yes, it is looking very different, and I don't think the workplace will ever be the same again.
Just come back to Tom on one of the points Joe made about those kind of stair conversations that on Teams everyone tends to just hit leave at the same time, and you miss that kind of just walking out the door. Have you got a second moment? What do you feel at UMG has been lost by not being in the office? And what did you get a sense of what people are kind of excited about with regards to coming back and seeing each other again? Is it just a social thing because we do enjoy seeing each other and that social interaction, or professionally are people kind of seeing that there has been something missing that they're looking forward to getting back, or is it too early to say?
Possibly too early to say, but yes is the answer. People it's undeniable that we will have added benefit in being in the office for some part of the time, where you can just go and see someone. You don't have to start a chat or send an email and then set up a Zoom call. And equally, we we work in the music. It's a music record company, so we listening to music as a group is equally very beneficial, and having music all around that is not necessarily from your playlist, I'm sure must be very, very beneficial to the wider group. So I think it's one of the reasons some of our colleagues are very, very keen to come back to have this interaction, especially the departments that are working across different labels, and the central services as well. They're really, really keen. Equally, the last 18 months, 19 months showed us that we can be very successful remotely. And yeah, when I said too soon to tell, it looks like it's all about finding the right balance. What that looks like, that's what we're working on.
I think, I mean, the consensus, certainly from other businesses I've spoken to, and from the the input we're getting from you guys, is that blended model seems to be something that most organizations now accept can work really well, which relates back to my kind of productivity and performance piece. The well-being, the output for the organization of having the opportunity to see each other in the office, but also those focus moments, like Pete pointed out, when you've got a report to read or you need some concentration on something, working from home can actually be so much more beneficial. What do you think that means in terms of property strategy going forward in the long term? A lot of companies might still have 10, 20 years on a lease left, so it's not that you can divest or get rid of those commitments straight away, but clearly these things need to be thought about in the longer term. I don't know if that's something that's come up in your conversations, Pete, maybe not so much so, or I don't know if it's, is that something, Joe, you can comment on at all?
Well, yeah, I mean, as I said, we're shrinking all of our agencies' footprint. They pay per square foot, so we're shrinking all their footprint to free up. Well, we've freed up a floor and a half. Out of probably 9 full office floors, because we've got some meeting room floors as well. But so yeah, and our building works because they all have us companies. The cost of the build, the cost to run the building, my staff's cost, the catering cost, the hard services cost, the security cost, our rent and rates and service charges, whatever that number is, we have to get that back from our agencies. So whether if there's 1,000 people in the building, or there's 2,000 people in the building, you pay half per head. So we have not more people physically in the building, but more head count working out of the office, be that whether they're in the building or agile. Therefore, reducing everyone's overheads all up for our individual agencies.
And Tom, from your point of view, in terms of the bigger picture for the UMG group, it's not just the sort of space that you occupy, but there's also a sort of certain amount of status in a company's headquarters. So, the new King's Cross building is an impressive building. It's important to sort of showcase to your clients. If you occupy suddenly a building that's only 30% of that size, it doesn't have that same impact, does it? So that future strategy is not just about how much space you need. It's also about the kind of image of a company and how it wants to sort of outwardly present itself. Is that something you think is a real thing, or?
It's a good question. Not necessarily. I'll have to think about it more in depth. I think
throwing that one at you. Sorry, that was
it's quite a deep question, and it involves image strategy and all that. But from a facilities point of view, the first thought I had was I think our what's important to us is the image of our artists. So where we work is. It's great. It's great to have this wow factor. It's great to invite our artists in amazing premises, but I think the most important to us is really focus on the artist and the content we make.
Good. Thanks, Tom. Sorry for sorry for throwing that in there.
That's a good question.
So just
It's a very, very good question.
just to finish off, then, couple of minutes because I'm aware of time. But if you could all just give me a really brief summary, we'll start with Pete on what advice you think you could give attendees today in terms of helping them navigate their return to work, and what good practice you've seen that you would sort of recommend to others.
Sure. I think my points that, as a non-property manager are probably more general. I think the key one is talking to your team, finding out who is anxious about returning and ways to accommodate them back in slowly. For me, I think it's something that it shows trust in the team. So as managers and leaders, you're responsible for the team's performance and creating an environment that helps them thrive and not wilt under the pressure of returning too quickly. So for me, it's about trusting the team and giving them the ability to deliver what's needed in the most appropriate model for them and yourselves. So very generic advice, I'm afraid, but hopefully that's useful to focus on the people.
Oh, no, that's great. Thank you. And yeah, Joe, did you have anything to add to that?
Well, I'm a health and safety professional, right? So it all starts with risk assessment. Risk assessment, controls off the back of it, communication with employees. We've spoken about communication a lot, but also I think just don't let this opportunity pass you by. Don't go back to the same old. From a working perspective, from a well-being perspective, from all of that, but also from an environmental perspective. We know we need to make inroads into carbon, and we're committed to do so. The government and most companies have a commitment. Ours is net zero 2025. Stop jumping on planes to the States every other day. That would be my lasting message. That's a bit of a personal one.
That's really I think that's really valuable, and I think the key statement there, Joe, is don't just drop back into business as usual. This is what we used to do. This is a massive opportunity. Look at the benefits and how can we build on those benefits. Now we've got the ability to both work from home and get back into the workspace. Finish off with you, Tom. So last contribution, just to wrap up there for us.
Sure. The key for me, it's linking to the risk assessment. Stick with the data you have. So keep looking at the latest data available. It tends to change a lot of, they are big announcements, but then no document published until a few days later. So always keep answering the questions you have from your colleagues with what you know at the time of the question, and always share with them that things may change very, very quickly, and we are doing our best to adapt to the changes. But we've seen over the last 19 months big announcements, and then it took days, sometimes weeks, to actually get a document published. And this is from the facilities point of view, this is when we can act on something. We need to work. We've been working very, very closely with our HR team and our legal team to make sure that what we are implementing or all the different actions we make are compliant and relevant, and not jumping the gun by big announcements from whoever it is.
Yeah, and finding that balance of advice versus freedom kind of thing. Pete, did you just want to add anything there?
Yeah, I was just going to pick up on Joe's point of seeing this as an opportunity, and it's a bit of a broader point than managing the safe return to work, but this has been an opportunity for firms to collaborate and innovate more generally. You've got Formula One teams working with universities to produce breathing aids. You've got a pharmaceutical company working with Carlsberg to produce hand sanitizer in Denmark. So the pandemic has been a good opportunity to evaluate the sort of future strategy and see if there are other ways of working, whether it's using your intellectual property to do out licensing to new markets, or partnering with other organizations to produce brand new products. I think there are opportunities that are being created by the pandemic that now is the time, if you're evaluating your return to work and your overall strategy, perhaps think about that. And collaborations has been one of the biggest positive takeaways from the pandemic itself.
Brilliant. I think we've had some excellent contributions there. So thank you all, guys. What I'm going to do, I'm going to hand back to John and then let John sort of wrap up and perhaps pull together some of the information that that you guys have shared this morning.
Okay, thank you very much, Tom. I think great conversation, guys. We've got many people on the call today who are grappling with the same issues in terms of how they get their people safely back to the workplace and build on the lessons learned of the last, what feels like a decade, but has been 16, 18 months, something like that. I think I had a full head of black hair and no grey hair at the beginning of the pandemic. I think it hasn't done me a great deal of good. I do have one question.
That's not true, by the way, but sorry, yeah, just.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for that. I do have one question for you guys before we wrap up. I'm just really interested in what you think will be the biggest personal challenge you have over the coming period, as we sort of, at the beginning, I said, the beginning and the end of the pandemic. I think my view is we're probably not going to see, it's going to limp to a close over the next year, 18 months, 2 years, something like that. But I'm just interested in personally what you think will be the biggest challenge for you in your role over the coming period. Pete, I'm just going to start with you, and just a brief sort of synopsis of what you think the biggest challenge for you and your clients will be.
It's a big question. I think coping with the inevitable aftermath of the pandemic is going to be tricky. Whether it's government cuts, whether it's recession, or whether it's continued uncertainty. I work with investors and companies who are developing new technologies, and I hope that uncertainty doesn't drag out forever, that they realize that now isn't the time to sit and wait. We've had 16 months of kind of hedging our bets on what's going to happen. It's now time to go for it. So that's going to be the biggest challenge, persuading people that you shouldn't be sitting and waiting. It's time for action.
Okay, so time for action, convincing people to take action and move forward. Tom, what do you think will be your biggest personal challenge over the coming period?
Managing expectations.
Okay.
Managing expectations, definitely. We've got from 0 to 100, and everybody wants it. Whatever they want it now. So manage expectation while being compassionate and finding the balance between the business needs and the compassion needed to make sure that everybody's okay.
Okay, thank you. Excellent. And Joe, finally, what do you think will be your biggest challenge once you actually are allowed back to open up the building?
Well, and so what I was going to say is managing the building with a reduced staff, because it's no use having a building full of people all using 100 AV meeting rooms if 3 of our AV engineers have been pinged by the NHS app and told to go be at home. Likewise with all of that support staff. So there's that, but there's a whole new set of risks that we've got now with people working from home. So does their home have a smoke alarm, right? What are they doing in the event of a fire? They could be working alone, so there's a whole set of lone working risks. Obviously, we all know about the risk of display screen equipment, and then mental health and well-being, how monitoring that. So there's the set of risks we're facing in the office, but we do need to put some investment into these new, not a new set of risks, but a new location for the existing risks that we have now. Our employees are working from home for at least some of the time.
Okay, thank you very much, Joe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt to pull out a succinct summary of our discussion, the challenge that Tom just sent me a minute ago. So I think if I just try and sort of identify the groups of themes that came from the debate, there's clearly this risk assessment piece, deal with the facts, risk assess it, take a practical approach to dealing with stuff and making sure that people are safe and happy, listen to people's concerns and implement them. I really like that idea, Joe, of getting used to the new reality and just deal with it as you go. The idea of the wristbands, I think, is great innovation. You've had to close the building because of COVID a positive test for some of your team. A big shout out to Tom. I can see Tom from Havas is on the line today, so I hope he's getting better, and we'll be back with us soon. And this idea of there's an opportunity to build on what we've learned, maybe free up some space, take that money, invest it in the business in another way, accelerate on the idea of agile working. So I think just this comment from Tom, Joe, and Pete that we need to build on the changes. Things are never going to be the same again, to quote Joe, and we need to think about how we go forwards and build on the opportunity. So I'm going to finish on that upbeat note, build on the opportunity, which I think was Pete's closing remark. So I'm going to thank our guest panelists today, Joe from Havas, Tom from Universal Music Group, Pete from PMB Consulting, and Tom for facilitating the discussion. I'm sure all of our attendees will have enjoyed it. We will be putting the recording out as usual. If you do want some help or advice about the latest guidance and advice from the government, please feel free to contact Tom, myself, or any member of the team. There is guidance on our website that we'll be updating over the next week with the latest guidance from the government, so that's free to download. And a date for your diary. Our next webinar, we're going to have a short break in August to allow everybody to go on holiday in the UK, or if you're feeling a bit more risque outside the UK. And we'll be back for our next webinar at 11 a.m. Thursday, the 16th of September, where we'll be dealing with this issue of net zero carbon. How do we actually build and deliver net zero carbon going forward? So thank you, everybody. I'm just going to once again thank my guest panelists and my colleague Tom for our debate today, and goodbye, everybody.